I'm thinking about sex, and I'm thinking about how I've decided to no longer have sex again in life. No more romance with women. I'm thinking that it is obviously a cost in the enjoyment and pleasure of life. And I'm also thinking that I regarded achieving sex as being very important in life when I was a younger man. So I'm 49 now, so maybe that's the reason I'm less fussed about sex. I see sex now as a pleasurable activity, but it is just a thing. It's not the only thing. But there was definitely a time in my younger life when I did regard sex as the only thing, the main thing to be thinking about and trying to do in life. When I think about that now, I'm disappointed in myself that I regarded sex so highly. It was obviously nature doing its thing to achieve the end of children. And it worked in my case. I've had two children. So it could be that I've had two children now and less motivated to achieve sex. So I'm thinking, why did nature make sex so pleasurable? Why did nature make it so important for a man to want to achieve sex? I'm wondering how society would have developed if sex was not so pleasurable. If sex was just a functional activity with no pleasure associated with it, like brushing your teeth or whatever, would there be a problem in society not having enough babies? I suppose raising a child is no easy business. It takes a lot of effort. And maybe it's the case that many people would not want to have children because it's so hard to raise a child. And so it seems as if nature made sex so pleasurable to encourage men to want to have sex and would motivate men to have sex even despite the difficulty in raising a child. It's as if nature wanted to make sex so pleasurable so that men would want to achieve it even without the risk of pregnancy. So even if a man didn't want to have a child, had no intention of having a child, nature wanted men to have sex regardless. And I'm wondering if there would have been a problem in society if sex was just a functional activity. In other words, I'm wondering how many children who are born today, how many were planned and how many unplanned. I will probably look into that statistic to understand how many children are born intentionally and how many where the man had no intention of having a child. I think that's interesting because I suspect my initial suspicion without any research. I'm trying to work out what the percentage might be of children who are born who were intended as opposed to unintended children. My initial feeling is that most children who are conceived were intended, but a certainly high proportion of children were not intended, I'm sure. I just don't know how to even guess what the proportion might be. But I do bet that many children were not intended. And so nature made sex so pleasurable so that men and women would want to have sex despite the risk of pregnancy and would be less inclined to take methods of contraception because the pursuit of the pleasure was the main thing. So it is interesting when nature chose this way of doing things. And the pregnancy rate, if the sex was not pleasurable, if sex was just a functional activity, what would the pregnancy rate be like? I don't know how to really know what the rate might be, but I suspect it will be a lot lower. I think many more people would not be born. The birth rate would be very low indeed. So I am wondering how many children who were conceived were not intended. So I will look into that and see what I can find out. But I'm guessing that an awful lot of children were not intended to be produced. I just don't know how to judge how many. I think initially, just guessing, that most children were intended to be produced. But a big percentage of children were not intended, I'm sure.